I'm Eliza with Ancestral Evolution, and today we're making pemmican. This is part one of our series on how to cook with tallow. So pemmican was basically the original energy bar. This was used by the Native Americans both in the Great Plains and the Inuits. In his book, The Fat of the Land, Stephenson details how these tribes would use pemmican as a long-term energy source. Pemmican is an awesome food because it is shelf-stable, sometimes for decades, depending on how it's made. Pemmican is typically made with game meat or with beef. The key here is selecting a lean cut of beef. You do not want to use something like ribeye. You want to use the leanest cut, something without any fat in the meat itself. Fat is your enemy. If you have fat in the meat, then your pemmican is likely to go rancid much quicker and your shelf life is not nearly as long. So our basic process here is that we're going to cut our lean beef into thin slices, and then we're going to dehydrate it. And we're going to dehydrate our blueberries as well. Then we're going to grind both of these up, and then we're going to combine those with melted tallow and cool it down, and that's going to be our bar. So this is a top round roast of beef, and I'm basically going to cut it in slices that are, I'm going to aim for 1/4 of an inch or less. One thing you want to make sure you have is a sharp knife. Make sure your knife is sharp, sharpen it beforehand, and that'll make your life a lot easier. You also want to make sure you trim any fat from the outside of whatever meat you use. Again, you don't want any fat going in the dehydrator if you can help it. So we've got all of our meat sliced up in about 1/4 of an inch slices. Now we're going to load our dehydrator. I use an Excalibur dehydrator. I think this is the best quality dehydrator that you can buy commercially. I'll also link below to some plans where you can make your own dehydrator for much cheaper, but if you are going to purchase a dehydrator, I do recommend the Excalibur ones. They're great. So I have about 1.5 cups of frozen blueberries here. Blueberries are kind of the closest berry that we have today to what the Native Americans would have been using in their pemmican. And then we're just going to load up our meat. We just want to place it on our dehydrator screen so nothing is overlapping and everything gets good airflow here. So we've got all of our sliced meat in our dehydrator lined up, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a sprinkle of salt. I recommend using a high quality salt like a sea salt or a Himalayan pink salt. This is a salt called Redmond's salt. I'll link below. We like this and we've been using it for a while. So we're just going to close up our dehydrator and turn it on. We're going to set it to about 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if you decide to dry your meat above 120 degrees, just know that some of the nutrients in the meat will be degraded by that. Traditional pemmican is dried at a lower temperature for a longer period of time. That preserves the nutrients in the meat. All right, so we've got our dehydrator going, and we're going to check on this in about 24 hours. So it's been about 24 hours since we started our dehydrator. So we're going to take a check here. You can see our blueberries. They're getting there. They're still a little bit gummy. They're not completely dry. Our meat is coming along. And what we're looking for in our meat is that it breaks when you try to bend it. And this is still a little bit bendable, so it is not ready yet. So I'm going to let this go probably close to another 24 hours, so a total of 48 hours. And we'll see how it looks at that time. So it's been about 48 hours now, and we're going to take a look. Got our beef, check it, and now it's breaking when I try to bend it, and that is what we're looking for. If it was still bending, you would want to dry it for longer, but it is breaking, so that's excellent. I'm going to check our blueberries, and our blueberries are dry too, so we are good to go. So our next step after making sure that our meat and our berries are fully dry is to weigh them. Now I weighed our dried meat, and we have about 265 grams of beef. And so our proportions are going to be 1 part meat to 1 part tallow, and then we're going to do a total of 5% of the weight in dried blueberries. All right, so I'm just going to break up the meat into some smaller pieces, and then I'm going to put it in the food processor to grind it up. We're aiming for a powder-like consistency. All right, so after we have everything ground up, it looks almost like a powder-like consistency. We're going to add our tallow. So again, we're doing 1 part meat to 1 part tallow. So I'm just going to finish filling up this muffin tin, and then we're just going to let them cool, and we'll take a look once they cool. All right, so our pemmican is done. We're going to give it a taste test. Not very good at all.
But it will sustain you if you're out in the wilderness, living on an iceberg, trying not to starve to death. Or if you need to travel across the country and there's no food available.
So this is a functional food. It would be great to take on a hiking trip or a backpacking trip. Or if you were an Arctic explorer and you had to survive in the wilderness and the freezing cold, this would be what you would want in your backpack. I wouldn't eat it for dessert, though.
Maybe bring some hot sauce. Anything. Some mustard. Ranch dressing.
No.
Sriracha.
One of the above. I don't know. It's fine. By the way, this is my husband, Dave. So, we both agree that while pemmican is eatable, it's not the most enjoyable thing in the world. So we're going to try to make a second batch, both improving the technique and making it tastier.
Yeah, this is, it will sustain you, but it is really, it's not terrible, but it tastes like tallow. It tastes like a very fatty, sort of weird meat. I don't know. Could use some more salt, maybe some more berries. I think we're going to put some honey in it. And honey is traditional. They did do that. It's not uncommon to use honey. And like I said, potentially some more berries and what have you. Just make it a little bit more palatable, because this is, again, you could eat it if you're hungry, if you're backpacking, if you want to go hike the AT, good to go, but you're not going to really enjoy it, and you're probably going to want something to put on it in this current form. So we're going to try to do a better one, because we think we can.
Keep in mind, though, the more additives that you put in your pemmican, the more you decrease its potential shelf life. So that's the trade-off.
Yeah. So
stay tuned.